Well, a brilliant day at the SCG. 2 days in a row, we've seen two magic centuries. Johnny Bairstow lighting up the SCG this afternoon. Welcome back to Cricket Daily. I'm Manners. If you're watching on the YouTube, hello. If you're listening on the podcast app, hello too. And Paul Dannett, welcome. How are you?
Good. Really good day's cricket. And the first couple of days, I was starting to think, you know what? Why do I love this sport so much? And then today was just superb. It was end-to-end action, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel as though the pitch almost cheated a little bit because the action was so good because the pitch had such variable bounce, which I don't think is how it should be. I don't think that international sports people should have to put themselves in such danger, but it's certainly made for a good day's viewing.
Yeah, on that variable bounce, I had an interaction with Ed Cowan on Twitter, former Australian opener. Look, he's on the New South Wales board, so there is some bias there, but he doesn't think the pitch is that bad. But I'm with you. I think that variable bounce when it's going up is dangerous.
I haven't seen this interaction yet. Was it amicable?
Yeah, he and I are great friends. He came into Piccolo Podcasts and recorded an interview last year for another show. So, yeah, we've caught up. He's a lovely guy. So just for those catching up on the score, England started the day batting and they finished at 7 for 258. The day started with some of the most stunning cricket. It was raining for the first couple of hours, so they didn't get on till 12:10. So 2 hours and 10-minute delay from the scheduled start. But then England crashed to 4 for 36 in an extraordinary sequence of events. Scott Boland had 2 for none again. The guy just keeps wowing the crowd. And there was a period, before lunch and just after lunch where England went 70 balls without scoring a run. So much to talk about today. We've got a long wrap-up show. Let's start with that first session. Very first thing that happened was a chance went down off Hamid. I think Carey dropped it, and we foreshadowed that coming into this match. What did you make of it?
It's funny how up till then, everyone's just been saying, hasn't Carey settled into Test cricket like a duck to water? But really, there's that catch. There's the 2 that he missed, as we talked about, where he let them go through to between himself and David Warner. Well, this time at least he went for it. He hasn't scored that many runs either. He's probably. I'm starting to think that maybe Cameron Green should be the keeper. He's got a nice long wingspan. He would have taken that much more easily.
You can't bowl if he's the keeper, mate. So
yeah,
I prefer Josh Inglis.
No, he takes off the pads when he bowls and gives it to someone else, Steve Smith or someone.
Yeah, Matt Wade used to do that. Yeah, well, look, an absurd idea, but thanks for bringing it up.
Well, slightly humorous, but
I know. I think Carey was a bit unlucky there because the ball seemed to swing late. I guess the only thing I'm happy about is I'd rather he goes for it. Like those 2 with Warner, he missed. He didn't go for it. But you're right. It hasn't been flawless.
Actually, he probably shouldn't have gone for this one because it would have hit Warner on the chest. So.
Yeah, but I think it sort of swung late as well and went a bit wider.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Stark was a bit annoyed about that, and then he knocked over Hamid with an absolute jaffa, but not a great shot from Hamid.
No, Hamid, I mean, he just doesn't look like he's going to succeed, does he? I mean, I know Hamid rhymes with succeed, but that was a pretty ordinary shot. Have you ever seen a weaker arm of a modern-day international Test player as well? Like he throws like he's never played cricket before.
I haven't noticed that, but yeah, it was a shocker. And then next goes Zach Crawley, bowled Boland, and Joe Root goes for a duck off 7 balls. And at this point, England are in trouble. Boland's got 2 for none. So when he had 2 for none, in his last 51 balls in Test cricket at that stage, he had 9 for 15. That's I don't know, you wouldn't have seen a run like that very often.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. For a guy that I said, not with harsh criticism, but I didn't think they should have picked him. I suppose 9 for 15 off 51 balls is a pretty strong answer to that, isn't it?
Well, just you'll be not surprised that Chappelli at the It's Cricket Etc. live show said Scott Boland's a shield bowler. Yeah.
You could argue with the batting average of 41 that Ian Chappell's not that much higher than a shield batter.
Yeah.
Was it 42?
You should text that into ABC tomorrow when Chappelle's in and see what happens. I've got some Chappelli-isms. So when Hamid went, it was none for 22. Then they crashed to 4 for 36. Milan was out to green just before lunch, caught around the corner after he'd been hit. And at that stage, honestly, Paul, I was thinking England are fucked. Like I was like, they're going to be rolled for 60 or 70, and it could be over today. Like the whole test could be over today.
I backed them at that stage.
Yeah.
A small bet on them at 130-1, just for a bit of fun.
Crickvids had them at 0% on there. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So Ben Stokes made 66 off 91 with a side strain.
Before that, sorry, just want to just a couple of things on that. I was disappointed with the little bit of byplay with Mitchell Starc, and not directed at Crawley, but that ball that he bowled, that one of the first of many of the day, that reared up off a length, struck Crawley painfully on the gloves, and Crawley the bat dropped out of his hands. Firstly, Stark shied at the stumps, which is, I suppose, in the heat of the moment, it's a competitive sport. But it wasn't the nicest of looks, I didn't think, for a bloke that's clearly sort of feeling a bit of an injury. And then saying to Lyon, what did he say to you last night? And then, oh yeah, thought so. And it was the old Australia, like the unpleasant sort of sneering Australia, that it's not a major incident at all. I don't want to be saying that I'm overly critical of Stark, but it's the first under the Cummins regime, the first time that I've seen those old ways creeping back in. There is absolutely no need for it. Now, I don't mind if there's a heated confrontation and a little bit of something in the spur of the moment, which this to a degree was, but it was also, you've just hit the bloke on the hand. I understand you're frustrated because you've had a catch dropped and a wicket taken off a no ball. It's the sort of thing that Cummins should pull him aside and say, mate, we don't need to do this. Crawley smashed him for a 6 a few balls later, or a 4 a few balls later, which Michael Vaughan said was the shot of the summer so far for England. It's proven to be counterproductive. It makes us look boorish. It's a minor thing. But as I said, it's the first little instance of that I've seen under the captaincy of Pat Cummins.
Yeah, I wonder what was said yesterday. I'd love to know.
They showed it. It would look like he was just having a minor little chat with Lyon. So I don't know.
Maybe he said, "Hope we break your fingers" or something. So that was the spell where there was 70 dots around that 4 for 36, and I can tell you at this point, it was mayhem for the English press pack. They were all looking very disconsolate because the problem with being an England reporter on these tours is how many times can you write the same story about how shit your team is? So at this point, they were all looking very forlorn. But that 70 balls isn't the record for the longest dot ball sequence in Test cricket. The longest dot ball is 154 dots. That was Australia v Sri Lanka in 2016, where Neville and O'Keefe tried to save the Test match.
I had money on Sri Lanka in that one at $8 or something. So it was very nervy that Australia looked like they were going to hold out for a draw, but they didn't. So I was unpatriotically cheering on Sri Lanka.
So there was this moment where the game was really in the balance. The conditions were murky, but then Stokes hits a return catch to Cummins. He drops it. Then Stokes, the first extraordinary thing to happen today, or one of the many, Stokes gets knocked over by Green, but the bail doesn't fall off. So they had all these chances, but what did you think of that Green ball?
Well, I think, and I would say this regardless of whether it was an Australian or an English bowler who's going to be getting the wicket, that's out. It should be out. Two things. One, clearly the stumps are in too hard, or the grooves are too strong. But secondly, the bails were brought in presumably 200 years ago because back in those days, you weren't always sure if the stumps had been hit. These days, we always know. So what they should do is keep the bails. They're nice, and you don't want to change the height of the stumps. Just rewrite the laws and say you're out if the ball hits the stumps, regardless of whether the bails are dislodged. And in an instance where they're not sure, they can go up and check it on real-time Snicko or Ultra Edge, and within a second or so, they'll know whether the ball hit the bails or not. And people who are saying, "Oh, this shows," those of you who say if it's out, if it's shown to be clipping on Hawkeye, that you can't give it because maybe the bails wouldn't fall off. I was waiting for someone to write that, and I knew it was going to happen. And it was like, oh gosh, change the law, and so that it's no longer a problem. And wouldn't that be a better result than an unsatisfying moment when a batter who deserves to be out gets to stay?
Agree, and that was so weird today because the ball went off the stumps like it was a bat, like it, deviated. Paul Rifle even gave Stokes out because he thought it was hit the pad or something. So, so a lot of luck. But then Stokes and Bairstow counterattacked, and Bairstow copped a nasty. Did you see him get hit on the thumb? It was a really nasty one. It looked like he'd have to go off.
It was one of those ones where you were watching it almost cringing and thinking this could be horrible, and you're just feeling hopeful that he's not going to collapse in agony. So the fact that he kept on going, he's a tough little guy. And Stokes, of course, as you started to say before I interrupted you, was the exacerbating that the side strain, and a couple of he hit Mitchell Starc for 3 consecutive boundaries. And this leads to my stat of the day, and that is
go for it.
Between them, if you add their 2 innings together, Stokes and Bairstow went at a collective strike rate of 73. So we have been saying ad infinitum on these shows that England are batting too slowly. Now, I know it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to a degree that if you score runs, your strike rate's most likely going to be higher because you're batting well. But they both were forced to play aggressively. Stokes because of his side injury, and I think Bairstow, after his thumb was injured, was starting to think it's the right way to play as well. It shows it's the right way to play. It's not always going to work, but there's more future in that than what Stokes has been doing in every match up until now.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It was actually a really good counter-attack to watch because
wonderful.
Because
I was almost cheering them on. It was that good.
Yeah, exactly. And England were 4 for 70 at one stage, and by then that's when I think 3 drop chances, bowled off a no ball yesterday, a bail that didn't go off. So you're thinking these guys are shot, and then you just see some great stuff from Stokes. So he made 66 before being LBW to line. Then Josh Butler comes in, and I don't know what he's doing at the moment, but he just poked one to cover off Cummins. He was out for a duck off 8 balls, and you think it's a pretty easy fix now, moving Bairstow down to 7 and maybe taking the gloves.
Maybe. I mean, it was a soft dismissal, but I think he just got slightly early on it. It was a slight leading edge. He was sort of playing a little bit onside-ish as well. It was a soft dismissal. These things happen early on. They often show that stat of Bairstow averaging 10 more with the gloves than without. And I think that's a nonsense stat. That you might as well say that he's averages 10 more when he wears yellow underpants or not. So I think that's correlation does not make causation. They're going to say, when he's got the gloves, he feels as though he's got a second.
Would you say that stat doesn't tell the whole story?
Now, don't try and be clever. You should never try and be clever, Menas.
All right, well, let's go to my good day, bad day, because good day, Mark Wood, because this is when he comes in. He replaces Butler, and Australia decides to bowl short to him. And he hooks Cummins for 3 sixes into the front of the Clive Churchill stand. He makes 39 off 41. It took the pressure off Bairstow, who could just saunter to his 100. And it was a lovely little innings from Wood.
Yes, and it's disappointing. I don't want to be too critical, but the first time that the Australians are under real pressure, Cummins does what every other captain has done: pushes the field back. It was a strange sight seeing the world's #1 bowler bowling around the wicket to a tail ender with the field scattered to all parts and bowling bounces and getting hit for 6. Admittedly, he ultimately did get him out with the short ball, but this is, instance number 461 where doing that doesn't work. And so I don't understand why they did that. It was I'll always, I think, be a big fan of Pat Cummins as a captain. But today, the Starc incident and this were a little bit disappointing for me.
Yeah, Justin Langer was asked at the end of play whether it was the first day Cummins had been tested as a skipper and how does he think he responded. And Langer was very diplomatic, but said, he'll have learnt some stuff. And no doubt that's it. I think they went short a bit too early for Wood. I would have liked to have seen a more conventional tactics for longer. And as it kind of let him off the hook because then he was just like, well, I'm just going to smash it. And he got away with it. And it was a brilliant little inning. So that was my good day, Mark Wood. No writing.
Mark Wood.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with the way he copped the decision that a lot of players, clearly he hadn't felt. So he went to hook one, crashed him into the head, and then it's ballooned out to, was it point? And he got caught. And was it point? Anyway.
Point or gully. Can't
Yeah,
remember.
might have been Gully. And the Aussies appealed, challenged the decision, and there was a small little mark on the RTS, so it clearly showed it just got a little edge before it had hit him on the head. Most players would have gestured angrily saying, no, I didn't hit it. He just said, oh, I hit it, looked a bit bemused, but walked off without any sign of anything. And I just thought that was impressive.
He's probably like slightly concussed after being smacked in the head. So
maybe Chappelli would have said,
wandering off in a daze.
Chappelli might have said that's why it shows you shouldn't have helmets, because if he didn't have a helmet, that would have just dropped at his feet. I mean, he might have followed shortly after. But
I do have some Chappelli-isms coming up, but let's get into my bad day. So my bad day. Well, I've got two. I don't know what was going on with English batters today, but the SCG has these massive sight screens and they're complaining because people are sitting in their seats. The sight screens are massive. And if you've been to, say, Lords, for example, at one end at Lords, the sight screen is like a postage stamp. So I don't understand why somebody going to get a beer like next to the sight screen should put them off that much, because the sight screen's massive. How could it be in their line of sight?
I think it's what, once you make the decision to get annoyed by it once, you almost, it would become a bugbear of you. And I think that, yes, they kind of need to let it go. These people have paid they're sitting in good seats. They might have paid $190 for their seats. And
well, that was the top tier, $190. So I reckon 160 easy.
Yeah, well, I think some of them were in the top. Like some of them, I thought was above the sight screen, like the best seats in the house.
Members, yeah.
No, not the members. The in the Churchill.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's not members. So yeah, so that was bad day English batters. I just think,
and also, sorry to jump in again.
Yeah,
that you mentioned the small sight screens in England. In the olden days, as in I remember in the early sort of 1980s, sometimes they didn't even have sight screens at all. You're just looking completely out of the crowd.
I've seen some interesting ones at grey grounds, I've got to say. Like this black drapes and stuff. All right. And then the other bad day is the Australian spectators that were kicked out from the members stand. Now, the official line is they were asked to leave and they agreed to leave. And I actually went down and saw them being escorted out by the police. So they may have been asked to leave, but they were still walked out by the police. So you interpret that however you want. So as Stokes and Bairstow came off, so, England lose 4 wickets in the first session. They don't lose a wicket between lunch and tea. Really good stuff for them. Then a couple of Aussies yell out, and I should get the quotes. They said, Ray's put them here. Someone told Stokes, you're a fat, grumpy man. And then someone yelled at Bairstow, take your jumper off, Bairstow, lose some weight and get fitter. And then those two, they were kicked out Bairstow turned around and said, hey, pal, you're not so tough now, are you? Because the guy must have walked away. What do you make of that? There's been some people saying, that's not like that abusive. Where do you sit on this one?
Firstly, no one should be saying that. Why would you say that? Just don't say it. Do they deserve to get kicked out for it? Look, if you did that, then every single player, every single member of the English fans in Edgbaston in 2019 probably would have been kicked out for the way that they were talking to Warner and Smith and everything else. So I don't know. It's hard without having seen it, but it sounds like it was just dumb nastiness. And yeah, I think in 2022, that's probably you're probably going to expect to get kicked out, I suppose.
Yeah, so a few things jump out at me. Firstly, Bairstow and Stokes harden up. You just got to ignore that shit. It's not like I thought someone had said something pretty low, and when I heard it was just saying the weight, I think that is, you shouldn't be saying that. And, with mental health such a prevalent issue, you shouldn't be body shaming and all that stuff. But still, if you're Bairstow and Stokes, you should just ignore it. You just be the bigger man and you go into the dressing room and you think about the game. That doesn't change. I don't think people should be yelling that out. But it is an interesting sort of, signpost, because, that's so tame compared to half the shit I've heard at the SCG. I can tell you as the last ball of the day was being bowled, a massive punch up started in front of me in quite a posh area of the stand, like a full punch up. So I don't know. Yelling at someone's fat is not the right thing to do, but it seemed strange.
Yeah, I thought maybe they'll be having a go at Stokes about the Bristol nightclub incident. It'd be interesting if someone if someone did have a go at him about that and said something like, you shouldn't be allowed to be playing or something because you punched that guy, and he had then reacted, if they kicked them out for that, I'd be very annoyed about that, because he got suspended by the ECB and got heavily fined for that. And that is a direct comparison to what people were saying to, Smith and Warner, who also got suspended and fined and for doing something far, far less. So, yeah, I mean, just be a grown up and don't say those sorts of things to athletes who are, competing for your pleasure.
Yeah, I just think it's sort of almost, it's just it's a sign of a real shift now in the way we treat athletes and have regard for their mental health. Because I think that's what it comes down to. So that was my bad day. What else happened? Well, Bairstow goes to his century off the last ball of the day. In the last over of the day, slashes one down to third man for 4. He's 103 not out. Jack Leach is 4 not out. Stokes and Bairstow 138 run partnership was probably the highlight of the day.
Yep, it was. It was wonderful. I was really pleased for Bairstow. I've always admired him and thought he was a better player than his test record would indicate. And I suppose the other thing we haven't really touched on is the pitch. That I think that it made for very entertaining cricket. But how many times did players get wrapped on the fingers? I think that's too many. And I think that if you're facing up to a really, really fast bowler and thinking, I'm not sure whether this one's going to shoot through or shoot up, that's not good enough. And the thing is, if the pitch didn't have that uneven bounce to it, then the cricket would have been probably a little bit on the dull side, as it has been. So I don't like it when a pitch is a little bit too slow and then the spectacle is salvaged by uneven bounce, because I think that's sort of like a cop-out almost. Not that not trying to animate the pitch and give it human qualities, but I'm a bit disappointed by it, and I wouldn't want to be batting on it.
And I think actually we'd probably hear a bit more about the pitch if England had more fast bowlers. So when England bat, they've got Green, Cummins, and Stark all bowling above 140. England have got Wood, who bowls that quick, but that's it. So maybe Australia would have made a few murmurs about the pitch if Archer and Stone or whatever had been bowling at them. So
but don't forget as well that I think the pitch was worse today, and it's going to get worse. And even though Wood is the only one that's out and out express, Ben Stokes is not going to bowl again, you wouldn't have thought, but he broke or almost broke Warner's ribs in the first Test match. Facing someone like Stuart Broad on a pitch where the bounce is up and down is not anything that I would enjoy. Let's just say that Stokes is that Bairstow now is out for months, and he'd be entitled to say, why should I have to be playing on a surface? I agree. That?
Yeah, I mean, I said it yesterday. The pitch is underprepared. I mean, I wholeheartedly support you, Paul, on this one. Me. I want this guy sacked. I want this fucking groundsman sacked. All right, and I don't actually. I mean, I would never want anyone to lose their job, but I hope he gets better for next summer. I hope that the last 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, however long he's there of experimenting, because like Les Burdett was curator at the Adelaide Oval for like 30 or 40 years. Like if you go back, his first few years probably weren't that great. So anyway, Chappelli watch, South Australia. So 2 things happened today. First, he's in commentary, and at this point, I think maybe some of the close infielders were saying a bit to the batter, not much, but just a little. And Chappelli goes, "Oh mate, I'd have just said to the mate, if you keep doing that, I'm going to play a hook shot, straight into your face or something."
He used his line, because I've heard him say this about 100 times, and he always says, "I just wouldn't face up. I wouldn't face up, and then I'd smack someone over the head, and then I'd say to the umpire, now you've got a problem. Now you've got to deal with it."
Exactly. So he said something like that. And then the second thing was, this was in the spell of dot balls. Andrew Moore said, and I can't remember the play, so he said, X used to bowl a lot of balls here, a lot of dot balls here for New South Wales. And Chappelli said, the batters must have been facing the wrong way.
And that segues neatly into Chappelli's acolyte. There's a line you can draw from Bill O'Reilly to Ian Chappell to Shane Warne in the whole, like, they've influenced each other, and they're not always wrong. Like, often they're very entertaining, but sometimes they are a little bit crazy. Like, Bill O'Reilly thought the coach was nonsense. So does Ian Chappell. So does Shane Warne. But that was the Shane Warne having the sledge with Chad Sayers today on Twitter, where Chad Sayers was having a go at Warney for having had a go at a couple of the Aussies, and Warney arced up, and his big point was, mate, I bowled spin with the keeper up. You bowled fast or pace in inverted commas with also the keeper up. And the thing about that is, it absolutely emphasised to me a very key thing. You know how Chad Sayers played that solitary test match a few years ago?
Yeah, in South Africa.
And Shane Warne was in commentary and said, "Oh, was it in South Africa? Was it in South Africa? Anyway,
yeah, it was after there was the ball test after the ball tampering.
My memory's gone. Shane Warne in commentary said, "I would have expected that Chad Sayers bowled a bit faster than this." And it was clear he had never seen him bowl. And it's also clear from that's his main sledge, that he never saw him bowl subsequent to that either. That his entire knowledge of Chad Sayers' career took, 400 wickets or whatever else, was one test match. And I just think, I suppose he's a very good bowler, great bowler. Maybe he doesn't need to, but a lot of commentators would do a bit more research than that, and wouldn't feel that they could have the gumption of just turning up and presumably that's the only time I ever saw him.
Yeah, and getting paid, I think, $25K per day at Fox Cricket, something like that. You should do a bit of research for that. The test match, England, what are they? They're a little bit, they're still quite a bit behind. They trail by 158. So what are you expecting to happen? Rain forecast for Saturday, rain forecast for Sunday. You've been partial to having a bit of a bet every now and then. So give me your prediction for the rest of the game. Viewers that are putting questions, we'll get to them in a sec. Bit of world cricket news and local cricket news I want to touch on as well. What do you think is going to happen in the test?
Firstly, I don't understand how everyone has been saying rain the entire time. We haven't actually had that much rain. And each day the forecast is, to my eye, half decent. And everyone's saying it's going to rain tomorrow and rain the next day. It doesn't look to me like it's going to rain that much. Who knows? It may rain a lot. But I think there's every chance that we'll get plenty of cricket in the next 2 days. I was on Crick Info this morning seeing and all these people saying, oh, it's going to rain the day off, it's going to rain the day off, it's going to rain the day off. And I said, I actually wrote my only ever comment to Crick Info. And I said, it's just stopped raining where I live, which is 20 kilometres from the ground. And the minute by minute apps say it's going to stop raining in the next 5 minutes. And then the bloke at the ground suddenly wrote, no, look, they didn't respond to me directly, but the drizzle looks like it's set in. And then 2 minutes later, oh, I stand corrected. The covers are coming off. I was like, yeah, thanks, champion. So we may not get as much rain as everyone thinks. What do I think is going to happen? Oh, I suppose I think that England...
Can you see England getting a little target to chase on the last day of, say, 200? Could they sort of whittle away at this and then knock Australia over and give themselves a sniff?
I think what's more likely is that they need to come out tomorrow and play aggressively. And I wonder whether they will or not. I think Australia should be able to knock them over without too much damage. And if they can do that, and if the rain doesn't come, then Australia, if they bat aggressively, and I think they will, because I think they'll realise this is the sort of pitch now where you are very much in, the right thing to do is bat aggressively. Australia should then actually be able to set a declaration early on day 5 or even late on day 4. And I think Australia should still win from here. But as I said, I had a small amount on England, 130-1. So if England win, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, I think Australia should still get the chocolates as well. And you're right. It's not so much the weather. Well, the weather's one thing. It's got to stop raining. But one thing that's impressive is the SCG can be ready to go pretty quickly. And we saw that in the Women's World Cup semi-final 2 years ago now, where Australia looked like they weren't going to get on. So that's a good segue. So I want to hit some cricket news before we get into questions. Do you have a few minutes, Paul?
Yep.
So firstly, the Women's Ashes is coming up and it's been moved forward a week. And they're actually they're not coming to Sydney now because there's a situation where basically both the English and the Australian squads go from Australia then to the Women's 50 over World Cup in New Zealand. And basically they all fly together, they all quarantine together. And if anyone gets COVID in the 7 days before they leave, the World Cup's over for them. So if Meg Lanning were to get COVID 3 days before, they can't go afterwards. The New Zealand government won't let them in. So they've taken the women's Ashes now like away from Sydney and some hot spots, even though they're in Melbourne, which is not great. But they're trying to sort of keep them protected so they can all get to the World Cup. So, yeah, that's being played. I'm really looking forward to that. I think we'll see a competitive series. And I actually really like the multi-format point system.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Is it going to be in full on 7, mate, or what's the story in terms of coverage?
I think it'll all be on 7, mate. 3 T20s, 3 ODIs, and 1 Test match.
Yep, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I thought that the series against India was superb and was probably the most international women's cricket I've ever watched. Hopefully I'll beat that in this time.
I guess the thing is, though, we've seen in the men's Big Bash that, once COVID gets into a team, it spreads. So, the nightmare scenario for Australia is that COVID gets in there in that week leading up to their flight to New Zealand. So, there was some talk that their conditions are going to be quite a bit tighter than the men's have played just because of the impending World Cup. So that's the first bit of news. And 2 bits of news. In the last 2 days, there have been 2 wonderful Test victories that we haven't mentioned. Bangladesh beating the Test world champions on their home soil. And then last night, South Africa upsetting India with a gutsy chase in the 4th innings. Dean Elgar making 96 not out. I think just two great days of Test cricket results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bangladesh was so disappointing in the World Cup, and you got a sense of that they're on a downward cycle. The only thing that was impressive was still that when they played Australia in Bangladesh and they thrashed us on their sort of tailor-made wickets, their fielding was very impressive, and that was the one thing I thought that alone is a good sign. But it's Mickey Arthur coach, isn't he?
Mm.
Yeah. So he's a very good coach. And so fantastic that they could get up and get a
Was it Hussain who took 6 for 30 in the 3rd innings to bowl New Zealand out and give Bangladesh a tiny chase? Really.
I've forgotten his name off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
And then in India, South Africa, I saw all these Indians tweeting the night before when Thakur was batting, that's it. We've got enough now to bowl South Africa out. And South Africa didn't do it easy, but that was a very good knock by Dean Elgar. He anchored the innings, and I think I'll get the score, but they only lost 3 or 4 wickets chasing down a 4th innings target. Yeah, so good stuff.
I followed that game. I didn't watch much of it, although I've watched the mini highlights, and it looked like a pretty decent pitch. That on day one, the Indians were playing like Indians of old, where they were really sort of struck the extra bounce. Dwan Alafia is back playing. He went and did the
Kolpak, but it was Kolpak, but it stopped.
Yeah, but he's come back now. So he has an excellent record. It's a pity that he hasn't played for South Africa more so than that. And they had also Keegan Peterson looked pretty good as well. I'd never heard of him before, but he got a 60 in the 1st innings and got a few runs in the 2nd innings as well. So he looked pretty good. But yeah, Elgar anchoring the innings. And I was following it on Cricket Info, just expecting them to collapse. And so when it didn't, it was a pleasant surprise. So for everyone saying, and I'm not averse to saying this myself, that outside Australia, England and India, Test cricket's really struggling. Well, we've got New Zealand and South Africa and Bangladesh. That's healthy signs for the world game.
Definitely. Marco Jansen, another good one for South Africa in that game. Took 4 wickets in the 1st innings after being recalled. All right, another stat for you happened last night. You're never going to believe this. So Gurinder Sandhu, the comeback man, is now playing for his, I think, 5th team in Australia. He took for the Thunder last night. He took a hat trick. He's now the only ever Australian bowler to take 3 domestic hat tricks in domestic competitions. He's taken 2 before, obviously. 4 other Australians have 3 or more first-class hat tricks, but most of them were taken in tour matches, say playing for Australia on tour. So these are, 3 hat tricks in proper competitive matches. If you'd said to me Gurinder Sandhu would have that, I'd have eaten my hat. I mean, it's like Chappelli with a batsman facing the wrong way or something.
What was that bloke's name? Is it Matthews, the Aussie that took 2 hat tricks in the same day in a Test match in 1912?
I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm not too au fait with 1912 Test cricket.
It was Australia versus South Africa in a neutral Test match, and what was the triangular trophy? I've forgotten the guy's name. I think it was Matthews, but he took a hat trick in the first innings. South Africa followed on, I think, and then he took a hat trick in the second innings as well. So yeah, but Sandhu seems like he's found something. Like he looked like he wasn't on the way out, but maybe he's not.
No, I think Khawaja's had a lot to do with that. Brought him up to Queensland, and he's at the Thunder where Khawaja is. So yeah, so that's a record Sandhu got overnight. The Big Bash is still going on. Matthew Wade is taking an indefinite break from the Big Bash. There was no reason given for that other than it's being personal. So we'll monitor that one. But let's get into the questions. So I got a question via Instagram, and I'll read this to you, Paul. Hey, Cricket Unfiltered, I'd love to hear from Menners in your next live podcast about his thoughts on Stuart Broad not turning around and effing appealing to the umpire properly. Show some respect. Yeah. So that was a message. What do you think? And then I'll give my answer while I find out who sent it.
I tend to agree. It's not one of my, I've got 763 things that annoy me. It's towards the end of those 763, I would say. Probably when it annoys me is when he gets it wrong. If he doesn't turn around and it's plumb, that's one thing. But when he doesn't turn around and then does turn around all aggrieved, is like, what's going on? And the replays vindicate the umpire, then that even disappoints me more. So yeah, I agree. Like, turn around and appeal. That's the right way to do it.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. Rashid Khan's been doing it in the Big Bash as well. He runs down, not looking to the umpire. I think it's disrespectful, and I think umpires actually remember that stuff. And it's a bit different now with DRS. It probably doesn't matter if the umpire doesn't give you the line balls, but still, I think if you're a bowler, you'd be better served not to do that. Respect them. It looks bad, and yeah, I don't like it. I think Broad, he can be a pork chop. So, but he's not the only one doing it. Plenty of other bowlers do it.
Ben Stokes did the inverse of that today. He walked when he was given out LBW from Nathan Lyon and was absolutely plumb. But yeah, he was off without even looking at the umpire. Just before we get on, you're right. It is Hussain. So it's Eberdot Hussain, and it was Jimmy Matthews who took the 2 hat tricks on the one afternoon.
All right, do you want to read this one out to me?
From Brewer 74, how many more will the Poms make? Will Boland bowl again in the match?
So Langer was asked about Boland after play. He said that he can bowl now. He fell over on the last ball before the lunch break. Fell pretty nicely. Langer said his sort of elbow went into his rib and it kind of bruised it, but there's no damage or cartilage damage, so it's probably a bit sore. But he'll be fine to bowl in the second innings. How many more will the Poms make? Oh, I don't know. It could be fun tomorrow morning. They could actually make another 50 or 60 if they swing the willow.
Oh, I mean, even more. I mean, it's a dangerous situation that if they bat with some freedom, Leach can handle it. Broad, if they start bowling short, can spot a few boundaries. So Australia need to be very disciplined. Just do that old boring thing of hit the top of off stump and don't be tempted to put everyone back, especially if Bairstow starts swinging. Don't give him easy singles.
If we see T20 Bairstow, we could be in trouble. All right. Michael, come on, Paul. It's a bit of banter. We don't want to be best mates with these blokes.
Yeah, and I agree that plenty of people think that way. And as I said, it's not something that annoys me heaps, but I just thought it was the first time I'd seen. For me, if it's a head-to-head spat in the spur of the moment, that's a bit of banter. But when he's chatting to someone else, it seems disrespectful. And I can see tens of millions of fans around the world going, typical Aussies. They're all nice, but the minute that the things get a little bit, actually that stage was still on top, but they soon revert to type. And I just think that we should be better than that. But I agree with Michael that half the viewers probably agree with him.
Yeah. All righty. Next one.
Ray PMB9. Your opinion on the Mark Wood wicket? He was out.
Yeah, he was out. I mean, he edged it. It was, you could see clear as day, a spike.
And sometimes the spike doesn't match up with the exact moment that the ball passes the bat. But I did a Twitter video about that a while ago. Look it up if you want, and it's perfectly fine.
All right, Ray PMB9. Why should we allow fans near a sight screen? Not sure they are allowed in the subcontinent. Oh wow, there's a lot more. I mean, the simple fact is they're like a whole bay.
Well, they're along. They're not that close to the sight screen. The sight screen is meant to be, you know, if the players need bigger sight screens, then maybe they should make them bigger. But I think that the ground's entitled to sell tickets around the sight screen. And sadly, these days for test matches in the subcontinent, there's so much room the fans can sit anywhere.
Condi Rice. Hey, Paul is drunk. What do you say to these allegations? Condi Rice is back,
Condi
the
Rice.
Troublemaker.
She's been a troublemaker before on this. Actually, I'm completely sober. This is
Same.
Coffee in here.
Good. All righty. Well, look, I think that's it. A lot of great comments there. Love it when people get into the comments. Apparently, Russell Domingo is coaching Bangladesh. Well, okay.
Sorry. Oh, why did I think it was Mickey Arthur? Maybe I just assumed that he coaches. I always assume he's the simultaneous coach of Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and
a few other teams.
I've had a shocker there. Apologies.
Well, I said yes, so I didn't correct you. I didn't know. All righty. Well, thanks everybody that have listened to Cricket Daily. Some great news. So the day started. This is where we just can get self-indulgent, because if you're listening that far, you really like the show. Woke up this morning, get an email, bang. Cricket Daily and Cricket Unfiltered have made the final for the first ever Sports Podcast Awards. These are coming out of the UK, so they've let and a couple of Australian cricket podcasts in there, so that's good. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked. Congratulations to Paul and Jaleesa and all the people on Cricket Daily. Shortlisted, and we'll be needing all the listeners to vote. So we'll be putting links in podcasts and YouTube descriptions, and we'll be annoying you quite a bit to vote for the show in the coming weeks.
Yeah, please do. Maybe minutes we need to be strategic. We don't want to cannibalize our own. Maybe we need to direct the viewers all one way or the other. But
I agree. I was thinking about that. I'm thinking we should direct them to Cricket Unfiltered, because Cricket Daily comes under the Cricket Unfiltered banner. But honestly, personally, you spend a lot of time podcasting. You know, we're in our houses at the moment alone, and you don't often get recognized. So it was nice to make a short list. And get at least, a little bit of recognition for the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, we've got the recognition with the Cricket Daily winning the bronze medal at the Australian one as well.
Yeah, I know, but, I'm pretty insecure, so you can never get too much validation. All righty. Well, thanks, everybody, for listening. Day 4 coming tomorrow. Paul, catch you tomorrow.
See ya.